Good evening, everyone. We are back again, the Catalyst Lifestyle Podcast. I am your host, Sunkissed, and tonight my co-host Aria F. Wright will not be with us this evening. She's taking care of some personal business. However, she may be in the chat. So if you're in the chat, jump on in. If you have any questions, ask away. Once again, thank you for joining us. We definitely would like you to follow us on YouTube, Catalyst Lifestyle on YouTube. Subscribe, hit that like button. Also on Facebook at Catalyst Conversation. That's Catalyst Conversation with a K on each. And also on Instagram, Catalyst Lifestyle. Tonight, we will be discussing the 2020 election. Now what? The presidential election of 2020 is over. So we know that. But however, ballots were still being counted. As we all know, factually, Biden and Harris have won the election, and we're months away from inauguration for the new president, the 46th president and vice president of the United States. But now what? We, as a community, must stay focused and diligent and hold the people that we voted for accountable to make changes to a system that has been deconstructed by prior administration. So tonight we'll speak on the economy, politics, education, healthcare, housing, systematic racism, and the world issue of the pandemic. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in my first guest, who is Falana Williams. Hey, Falana, how you doing?
Hi, Sunkissed. How are you?
I'm great.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us this evening. So can you give us a little background on your expertise?
Sure. So I am a 20 plus year music veteran who about 4 years ago, after Donald Trump was elected president, I decided to pivot into politics for more than one reason. Me and my family moved back to Atlanta. As a mother, a single mom of two, as a Black American, I decided that my value and my passion was needed in the political sector. So after a very successful career in music and entertainment, I pivoted into politics with the help of what I would call my political mentor, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, who convinced me to work on her campaign. And that was my entree into the political side of things. And having worked on that campaign, which was very successful, she became the 60th mayor of Atlanta. And I've worked alongside her in the administration now for about 3 years. I am the director of film and entertainment for her office, and was happy to join her once she supported and endorsed President-elect Joe Biden. She was one of the first to endorse him, and after that, decided to work alongside the campaign for his bid to become our next president.
Right. That's excellent. And you being in this position now, do you miss music? Do you miss the music industry?
I don't, Sunkissed, and mainly because in my role, I'm still connected with the music industry in a different way, which is a plus for the political side, because my relationships aren't cold calls. They're actual relationships and friendships with the entertainment community, albeit an artist or manager. So I have my fair share of communication and interaction.
Okay, excellent. All right. So for our next guest, I'm going to bring in Rochelle Ritchie. Hi, Rochelle.
Hi, Sunkissed. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today.
Thank you for being on. Can you give our viewers a little background on your expertise as well?
Sure.
Oh, 1 second. I think we lost her, but we'll bring her back in. 1 second, everyone. But as we wait for her to hop back in, Falana, how long have you been working with Miss Bottoms?
4 years now, actually. Again, 1 year was on the campaign trail when she ran for mayor of Atlanta, and 3 years within her administration at City Hall in Atlanta, Georgia.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. We have Rochelle back. Hey, Rochelle.
Hi, I don't know what is happening. So yeah, I'm Rochelle, and I work in higher education in Chicago. I'm a former Congressional Press Secretary as well. And then I also worked for State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, who's the State's Attorney for Baltimore City when she was prosecuting the officers in the Freddie Gray case. I would say politics sort of kind of bit me a little bit during that time at the State's Attorney's office. I just saw how the criminal justice system really worked, the systemic racism that had saturated it for hundreds of years, as we know. And I wanted to be a part of her legacy as much as I could. And we really worked really hard, or she, I should say, and her team worked really hard on that case. And I was a spokesperson during that time. And then I lived in New York, in Harlem, before moving back home to Chicago. So that's my rundown. I'm giving to you quick because I'm like, I don't know when my internet's gonna cut out again like that. That was weird.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the era that we live in now, right? So it's it's a part, but we're here, we holding it together.
Right.
So I appreciate the patience. All right. So let's get down to it. So ladies, let's start with the first point of discussion. How much did the Black vote change what could have been Donald Trump's, what could have been Donald Trump's being in the White House for 4 more years? So how did the Black vote change that? Falana, you can start on that one.
Sure. So, I mean, the numbers say it all. I mean, President-elect Joe Biden has become, he will be the 46th president of the United States in January. And we know that, it was a 4 or 5 million vote difference with Americans. I think Donald Trump was 70 million and President-elect Joe Biden was around 75 million. And when you look at how the Black Americans voted, overwhelmingly was for President-elect Joe Biden. And had it not been for that vote, and that vote in such a strong percentage for the Biden-Harris ticket, we would have seen a different outcome. And there's no other group of people in our country that voted so unanimously for one candidate. And had we been more, our vote had been more allocated, we wouldn't have this outcome. So the Black vote is why President-elect Joe Biden is now going to be president of our country.
Okay, Rochelle.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite obvious when you look at what happened in Georgia. You can certainly see that Black turnout certainly swayed this election this year. I think it's really interesting that even with that, you still saw Donald Trump gain some of the Black vote. I think Black women were 4% in 2016, and then 9% in 2020. Black men were almost 19% of Black men voted for Donald Trump compared to 13%. And so I do think that the Democratic Party, while this is certainly a win and it does say to Black people, certainly does count. I think one of the frustrating things about it is that I think too often Black men are sort of left out of the conversation when it comes to elections. We know that Black women are the backbone of the Democratic Party. But the only time that Black men are mentioned when it comes to an election is when they're talking about criminal justice and reform and all of that. And so I think there is sort of a disconnect between how Democrats see Black men and how they see themselves and what's important to them.
Rochelle, do you think that some would argue to that point? Do you think that some would argue that Black men are left out of the conversation because of percentages such as the amount of Black men that voted for Republicans in comparison to Black women?
Well, no, I think that assumption is because historically, Black women have oftentimes voted a lot more than Black men, and they haven't really participated in the process. But when you look at the numbers now, and you see the number of African American men that did come out to vote, that says that they can no longer be ignored by the Democratic Party, that the Democrats are going to have to do something as opposed to just talking about criminal justice when it comes to the conversation of Black men. With Black women, you hear about healthcare, you hear about education, you hear about entrepreneurship. And then the conversation for Black men is prison reform. And that, to me, just sort of continues this stereotype of Black men being criminals in this country.
I totally agree with that. So just turning the gauge just a little bit, what is your perspective on the spike in COVID cases and deaths this year?
Look, I think that the present administration did a really horrible job in not only educating but communicating to the country the real risk of this pandemic. And we now find ourselves as a country in a situation where some tough decisions will have to be made in terms of how we contain this virus as a vaccine is found. And I think that we're going to have to do what it takes to make that happen. I think that we've learned a lot over the past 9 months living in a pandemic. And, I can't wait for President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris to take office, because, I'm very excited and hopeful for the clarity and solutions that will come with the new administration.
And Rochelle, same question. Like, what is your perspective on the spiking COVID cases and the president administration? What should the president administration do to help regarding COVID transition into the Biden-Harris administration? Because right now it seems like they're not doing anything.
Well, I think President Trump has made it extremely clear that he's not going to do absolutely anything to help the Biden administration as they move forward with fighting the COVID pandemic the way that it should have been fought the first time around. I don't have any confidence that Trump is going to do anything. As a matter of fact, he's not doing anything right now. All he's doing is talking about election and voter fraud. I mean, I don't even know the last time that they had a White House press conference about the coronavirus. Everything that he talks about right now is about him losing the election, even though for whatever reason he thinks that he didn't, but he did. So I think that the Biden administration is really, they're inheriting something that has taken over this country. The fact that the United States, as great as we're supposed to be, is leading in the number of COVID cases. I think there's 11 million cases in the United States with 200,000+ deaths. Sunkist, you know that my dad died from coronavirus in September. So the fact that this, that this administration, the Trump administration, has ignored this. I mean, he knew in January that this was going to be a problem, and he ignored it, and 200,000+ people are dead. I mean, we can't go anywhere right now. And I don't understand how some of these Trump supporters, I call them Trumplicans and maggots, by the way, I don't understand how they are actually able to support this man in any way possible. The fact that he even got 70 million+ votes is problematic to me. I mean, are people really okay out here just wearing masks everywhere they go, not being able to visit their loved ones, worrying about, their kids going to school, all of those things? So the Biden administration has their hand cut out for them. But my hope is that when Biden was when it was the Obama administration, they had a committee called Predict. And this is basically a committee where they worked with a bunch of different scientists and people all across the world to track deadly viruses like COVID-19. And they were able to do that because they had this committee. They were able to eliminate a lot of viruses that came to this country. Now, a lot of people talk about H1N1. Okay, the reason why it didn't get as bad as it could have gotten is because they had a committee of medical professionals and scientists to help eliminate the spread of H1N1. And so I'm hoping that the Biden administration will reestablish that committee and really get this under control.
I totally agree. Aria actually chimed in on the chat. Let's see what she says here. So as she's in agreement. Trump isn't doing anything, right? So all he's doing is playing golf. He's not addressing the nation. He's not speaking to the problems and the ill fortune of many people that are homeless, without jobs, who are sick, who are not getting treatment. And, that's the entire United States. But then in our community specifically, jobs are null, right? They're non-existent. I know a few people that lost their jobs, unfortunately, and the little stimulus that was being released, did it help? It was something, but it's not a true stimulus. Like, how can you really gauge? How can you gauge the economy to move forward and not assist those that actually help the economy to move forward?
And before I say anything else, Rochelle, my condolences to you on the loss of your father.
Thank you.
It's just so unfortunate that the present administration is really playing games with people's lives for political reasons, and even right now, like with their aggressive and consistent action on trying to change the Affordable Act, the Affordable Care Act. And, one of the main things they want to change deals with people with pre-existing conditions. And we all know that this pandemic has put people who never had a pre-existing condition into that category, and along with the millions of Americans who have pre-existing conditions. And so, it's sad that this is America, the leader of the free world, and we are dealing with these type of antics in our country. It's sad.
And I want to piggyback, if I can, real quick, Sunkiss, off of what Falana said. She made an excellent point about the pre-existing conditions. A number of people that have been diagnosed with COVID-19 now have some form of a pre-existing condition, because a lot of people think, oh, this just goes away. No, there's still certain ailments that people who have coronavirus or had coronavirus experience, whether it's being unable to breathe. There are people that had to have amputations because they were in the hospital for so long and the blood flow wasn't flowing to their, different extremities or whatever. So there are people that. But the other point that I really want to make is that when it comes to this vaccines right now are protected by the Affordable Care Act. It means that you can get a vaccine and be provided certain vaccines for free. So if he repeals the Affordable Care Act, and yet there is this vaccine that we're all supposed to take, how are people that don't have insurance through their job or whatever, how are they exactly supposed to pay for this vaccine? So these are some of the things that people really need to pay attention to when it comes to Trump and his minions and what they're trying to do to this country.
Both of you very valid points, and hit the nail on the head. For the next 4 years coming up, starting in January after inauguration, how can the nation recover from 4 years of Trump? And Rochelle, we'll start with you because you're smiling and smirking. So I want to know what's your outlook on that.
I don't mean to laugh, but it's like recovering from Trump. I think that Trump really exposed what the United States.
Oh, Falana, you can jump in on that.
Absolutely. So, I think President-elect Biden said it best. We have a lot of healing to do first. This has been a very divisive 4 years for our country. In some ways, I will say that it's been a blessing that a lot of the Band-Aid has been pulled off. I know for one, I was not aware that there was so much hatred in our country. And I think that one thing Donald Trump has done is he's exposed that, and we know what work we have to do. I don't think for a minute that a lot of us, especially Black Americans, will ever take for granted again what freedom means and having certain rights mean because of this president, the current president. And I just think, one, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of healing to do. It can be done, but I mean, the numbers show. I mean, we were nearly split down the middle in this election, and you know, there has to be a lot done. And I think one of the things, you know, we have to speak candidly about it is the media. I think a lot of, you know, there has to be some sort of regulations put on false information being so freely distributed in the media. You know, it's been amazing to me, some of the bigger platforms in our country that have been able to talk and distribute false information. And so I think that that's something on a higher level that has to be addressed. But healing and how we as a country come together, and the real true information is given to everyone instead of a lot of lies that are being told.
Okay. Rochelle, you can continue. Rochelle, can you hear me? Okay, one sec. It's having a little technical difficulty here. Okay, Rochelle, can you hear me? Okay, we're just going to fix her audio. All right. So, Falana, go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, you can go ahead, Sunkist. I'll answer another question if you. I mean, I don't know if you had anything to say to that. I can expound or.
Well, I think that with healing
So
is.
I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing both of you all, but I think that you all were talking about Trump and the divisiveness in the next 4 years and how we bring the country together. I can only hope and pray that we can actually do that and that we can bring this country together again. But I think that the damage that Trump has done is really permanent. Quite frankly, I think that he has bolstered racism. He has awakened a sleeping giant in this country, and he has exposed America's greatest sin, which is racism. And so I'm not that confident in anyone being able to bring this country together. I think that it's going to have to be basically us doing that. And by us, I don't necessarily mean Black Americans. I think that white Americans, it's time for them to hold each other accountable. And they need to do the work, because this is not something that should be on the shoulders of Black people to do.
Well, let me comment to both you and Falana's response to that question. I do agree that healing is necessary. At the same time, it has awoken a sleeping giant, and racism has always existed, as we all know. However, through Trump, it's been amplified. And the one thing I do respect about his presidency is the fact that I know who I'm dealing with. And now we all know who we're dealing with. We know who we're dealing with as, this is unfortunate to say, but we all know who we're dealing with as friends. We all know who we're dealing with as coworkers. We all know who we're dealing with as business partners, where you shop, where you do laundry, wherever it is you may be, you know who people are now. Even though some people are hiding, their political or personal beliefs to themselves, it's good to know who's in your surroundings, and how to move strategically. And the healing aspect definitely needs to be there, but then there's also accountability. So what we need to do as a nation overall, and definitely as Black people, is just be more aware, educate ourselves, and move forward in trying to better the situation and stay afloat and survive. So go ahead.
I'll add to that. I don't think that everyone who voted for Donald Trump is a racist. Again, I really do credit some of that. And when I think about it, if I'm a, just to be candid, if I'm a white woman and every day that I wake up and I'm looking at, social media or certain television channels, if they're telling me that, my kids, are either going to be, the Black Lives Matter movement is filled with radical left, violent people, which we all know is untrue. But if I'm being told that over and over and over again, I think that fear mongering is something that they put into American people on both sides. If I'm a Black male and the other side is spending millions, by the way, far more than the Biden-Harris campaign spent on information, positive information to Black Americans. If the other side is spewing falseness and lies, not even to get Black people to vote, to get them not to vote. So if that's all I'm hearing for the most part, then I'm inclined to either not vote or vote for someone who says, what do you have to lose? And, it's very unfortunate, but I do believe that, yes, we are aware now that we have a big problem with racism. Do I believe that 50% of this country is racist? Absolutely not. I think that what we have, again, I take this back to false information and really figuring out how the media plays a part in this, and not just television, social media, and just the access that other countries have to our country. And we have to figure that out. I think that has been a detriment to this country, and why we are one of the reasons, not the main, but this is one of the reasons why we're in this predicament today.
Can you guys hear me okay? Because I want to
Yes.
piggyback off of what Falana said. I think that it is true. I don't believe that 50% of this country is racist, but I do believe that they are okay with it. And I think that is the problem that we have with Trump, is that you have a lot of people out here that are okay with racism. And it's not necessarily, I think, just because of some of the things that he's said since he's been president, but it's his history with, housing discrimination, the exonerated five, that are now the exonerated five as we know them, but originally the Central Park Five. So I think that his racism goes back many, many years before he became president. And all of these things were exposed prior to him announcing that he was going to run for president. And even though people heard this, and even though they heard their Black friends complaining, and even though their Black friends were saying, oh, he's a racist, they still went out there and voted for him. And so to me, that says that they are okay with it. And as long as people in this country, as long as 50% of this people in the country, I think, are okay with racism, we're never really going to, be able to eliminate it. But I do agree that these people might not necessarily be, racist and have racist behavior, but they do have racial bias for sure.
And I wanted to add one more point to that.
No, go right ahead.
The only thing, and I agree, but I will also add that 19% of Black men, knowing that same information about Donald Trump, still decided to vote for him. So I think that we really have to get to the root of what this is. I think it's bigger than racism. We know that they're not racist, but knowing that Donald Trump put an ad in a newspaper saying that, calling, a bounty almost for 5 Black men who were later found innocent, 19% of Black men still voted for Donald Trump. So I think the issue might be bigger than racism. And I think that we as a country have to figure out what it is. I think it's easy to just say it's racism only. We have to figure out what the other underlying issues are that have us at this impasse in our country.
Yeah, racism is an easy campaign strategy. As soon as you label somebody as racist or shout out racism, then everyone gets emotionally triggered. And so that 19% of men, I think, were probably men that were not emotionally triggered by racism like many other people, for sure.
Right. And as we all know that, that is definitely a strategic approach to, galvanizing, your individuals that will vote for you. But how can we as a community, as the Black community, galvanize Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think
Okay.
Rochelle may be having issues.
Yeah, I can hear
Okay.
Falana okay.
Okay. So, Phalanis, I'm going to ask you this question, and Rochelle can piggyback off of that. So, how can we galvanize our community basically to keep the Biden-Harris team accountable for everything that was said or quote unquote promised during the campaign?
I think that we can galvanize our community to hold the Biden-Harris administration accountable by staying active first and foremost. We Black people have to really understand that elections aren't just every 4 years. Elections happen every 3 to 6 months in our country, and we have to, the down vote is so important, equally as important as voting for president, and the elections for city council and for the Senate and for just any election, your governor, those are all so important. A lot of decisions are made on the local and state level, and I think that we really have to stay engaged in that. I really want to shout out Yellow Paint. He's an artist, and he put together a rap song that, for me, really, for the first time, broke down in layman's terms how you vote and what it means to vote, and what the president does, and what what Congress does, and what your mayor does, and I think more of that has to happen. We should really spend more money in education to Americans as a whole, to be honest with you, so that everybody understands what it means to vote. So again, we have to hold our. We have to be active. We can't just blame the president or our governors or our mayors or whomever, our state representatives, for issues if we're not turning out the vote, if we're not doing our part. We have to stay active. It's a community effort, and the effort just does not fall on government. It falls on the people too, and it's always been a community effort, and it's always, for the majority, fell on the people. If we looked at leaders throughout our history who made change, they weren't politicians. They were from the community. And I think that we have to get back to that. The community activism has to be stronger.
Yeah, I think Falana is absolutely right. I mean, the fact that a lot of people in our country simply just don't understand civics 101 is also part of the problem, why I think they're not as engaged as they should be. I mean, when you have people saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter, if I go out here and vote," well, it does matter. In Georgia, where Falana is right now, is proof of that. Your state has a number of electorate votes, and when you go out there and vote, and you go out there in droves to do so, you've just won your state. And so that's why we saw Georgia turn around. And so, Black people in particular have to really understand that your vote does count, and that your vote is not an individual vote. Your vote is part of the electorate. And I think that is some of the misinformation that we hear a lot of times out there. I mean, people don't understand these Supreme Court decisions. Why does it matter so much who Trump puts on the Supreme Court? Well, it's a lifetime position. That means you die on the bench. This is not, we get rid of these people. These people can overturn laws, and laws that have protected Black people. I mean, if they wanted to overturn affirmative action or anything else, they could. And so we have to understand that's why it's important to get people in there that represent us. I will say that I was really hoping for a Black woman to be on the Supreme Court. I think it's way past overdue for that. But, to galvanize a community, we have to remind people of what we just did. And I think that Georgia, if you're Black in this country, even if you're not from Atlanta, you feel this like connection to the city anyway.
There's that connection.
And so we have to, remind people of, because we did that, on November 3rd, we can do it again on December 6th and get a hold of the Senate.
Absolutely. So Black Lives Matters. So earlier this year, we saw Black Lives Matter play a very strong hold in the police brutality that's taken place throughout these months. And what I want to know, Falana, I'll ask you this: how does Black Lives Matter play a role in the future of Black national development? What's your view on that?
And when you say national development, can you expound on that, Sunkist?
Absolutely. So when I say national development, what I'm referring to is that right now, as I said, the elections are over. So a lot of the energy that was mustered up prior to elections was based on certain issues, and Black Lives Matter being a very poignant one, I think helped to push the envelope and push the needle forward for us to go out and vote as a community. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see that energy dissipate. I don't want to see that energy go you know, um, underneath the rug, and a lot of people that I've spoken to have also said, what I haven't really heard much from the organization itself. So as a nation, from state to state, how can again, it kind of is a connected question to galvanizing the community. How can the Black Lives Matter movement be strong and poignant moving forward in each city and state within this country?
Well, I'll start by saying that the Black Lives Matter movement definitely got the attention of the country. I mean, even to see, Donald Trump pull together what I'll call a bogus plan, he did it because he knew that it was a very impactful um, time for this country. And
Right.
President-elect Biden put together a very thoughtful and plan for Black America. And I do know that there was input from the Black Lives Matter movement and their leaders. So I think that, again, it goes back to our people staying engaged. I do know that there's representatives all over the country for the Black Lives Matter movement. It goes to them having a seat at the table in January when the plan for Black America begins to roll out. They have to stay at the table, which I know that is the intention, is for them to be at the table. And the communities have to stay involved in it. I mean, again, it's not over. This is just the beginning of much needed change and healing in our country. And so, it's not just up to the Black Lives Matter movement. It's up to every city and state in our country to make sure that from now until 2024, not even now until 2024, but now and to next year and 2022 and 2023, leading into 2024 and onward, that we keep this a priority and we stay engaged.
Right.
Yeah, I think the Black Lives Matter as a statement, I definitely agree with. As an organization, I'm not really so sure. I feel like the organization itself is extremely disorganized, and I think that they have allowed their organization and even their cause to be hijacked by white liberal progressives. And I think they've also been infiltrated a lot by Antifa. So I definitely believe in the statement of Black Lives Matter, but too often I don't know who the voice is for it. I've done commentary. I think that I've maybe seen someone a few times on, some of the national networks that seem to be a representative of Black Lives Matter, but I don't see I don't see an organization. To me, is organized, and I don't think that it's extremely organized, which is why oftentimes you have you have Black Lives Matter being blamed for some of the violence that they probably more than likely have not committed, but because there's no sense of like who they really are, it's very hard to tell. And I think that a lot of white liberal progressives, particularly, have taken advantage of Black Lives Matter. I think they have taken advantage of Black oppression as well. And so, what I would like to see is for Black Lives Matter as an organization to be more exclusive to who they allow to represent them, to have some sort of code. The Panthers had a code that they lived by, and I think that Black Lives Matter needs to have a code. And when you see someone breaking the code, they do not represent us. I spoke with a Ku Klux Klan former Grand Dragon of the KKK on my Instagram, and he told me that during the Civil Rights Movement, those organized, chaotic sort of groups were often infiltrated by white supremacists. So when you see videos of bricks and Black children being paid to pick up those bricks and throw them in windows, and you have these people saying they're Black Lives Matter, no, they're not. They're white supremacists that are using our disorganization to their benefit to impact our communities.
I'm reflecting on everything that both of you just said, and my view on Black Lives Matter is this. I agree strongly with the quote, the statement, and the power that we bring behind it as individuals. I do agree that there's no strong figurehead that you can look to, you know, separate, issues that Black Lives Matter as an organization will control, and Black Lives Matter for those that want to piggyback on it for their own political or irate purposes. There are other organizations that, as we have clearly seen, and Philando, you've mentioned, the news and how they distort information. And a lot of times, like Rochelle brought up, bricks were being brought into certain communities. You see people that are, like masked and not really speaking to Black Lives Matters, but creating certain violent acts, and Black Lives Matters getting blamed for that. So I do agree that there needs to be a strong figurehead or multiple figureheads, because I am aware that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there are women that are in charge of that. However, I feel like it gets somehow like misconstrued, or sometimes it gets muddied in conversation. What's your opinion on that, Philando?
No, I would agree that, but again, I think that, some of what you said, Sunkist, and even, definitely what some of Rochelle said is true. It's like the organization has to be built out more. And again, I think that, it can't just be a national organization. It has to be localized on the city and state level. Otherwise, the message does get distorted. So if it's going to survive, yes, to a few things, and there definitely has to be some sort of accountability and some sort. It can't just be a movement for all people. There has to be structure so that you don't see that, and so you don't come to Atlanta or Georgia. Each place has a face of Black Lives Matter, and so if it's going to survive, there needs to be some structural addition to the movement, so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's 100% agree with that. I definitely think that localizing Black Lives Matter is a really, really good move. As you said, because then it just becomes, the message becomes distorted. It's completely disorganized. But I think that also when we have these movements and these organizations that are out here demanding justice, we need to be more specific about what our demands are. I think sometimes as Black people, that sometimes our demands and our requests are a little bit too shallow, and they sit right there on the surface and they don't go deeper. So we'll hear someone say, oh, we're going to revitalize the Black community. How exactly? And look, don't tell me we're gonna raise taxes on billionaires to do it. No, we've been raising taxes on billionaires and millionaires. I want to know exactly, how do you plan to revitalize the Black community? Which jobs are you going to give us? Because if you're talking about a $9 an hour job, that is not what we want. We need to be more detailed in in what we want. And I think that's why for too long, we as Black people have been getting crumbs when it comes to these presidential agendas. And even with Biden, it's a great plan. It's better than the platinum plan that Trump put together. It's a great plan, but there is no how. The only how we hear is raising taxes, and that's it. So I want us to become more specific in what it is exactly that we want, how they're going to do it, and when they're going to do it.
And I would agree, Rochelle. I have a sort of a different take on how that happens. Agree that, Biden's plan is a great layout. I think the how comes from us. I don't think that we wait for them to tell us how. I think we tell them And, just again, I'm very new to the political game, but I think that's why it's so stagnant, is that we have to stop waiting for them. I think we show them how it's going to be done. And that's why it's so important for us to have a seat at the table. I do have faith in this administration to make sure that we have a seat at the table. And oftentimes with our people, what I've noticed is that we don't know how to ask for what we want. And we have to. Like, our vote is too important to this, especially to the Democratic Party. The Black vote is very important. So, we can't complain if we're not asking. And we just have to start asking for what we want. And, I think we'll get it. And I think everybody else has been asking. Any of these other groups that you've seen, they come in with their list of exactly what they want. And we have to start doing that. So I think this time, let's take a different approach. Let's not wait for them. Let's come to the table with our ask. And I mean, if we get 5 out of the 10, I think that we've been very successful for the first round. And, it's not over. But I do think that we should take a very different, aggressive approach about what we want.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I noticed when there were some agendas out there, for example, like with Elizabeth Warren's agenda, and Kamala had this, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris actually has this in her agenda as well when it came to housing. And they were talking about how they were going to give a certain loan to people that lived in formerly red line districts. Well, when you go and read about red line districts, you realize that Black people don't live there anymore. More than 70% of white people now live in red line districts. So when we look at these agendas, it's so important for us to read the fine print and then say, okay, that's the agenda, but is that connected to what's happening right now in these times? Because if not, we need to say, okay, Senator Warren, okay, Kamala Harris, you all need to go back to the drawing board and get this right, because we don't live in those communities anymore. So that $8,000 loan that you were going to give that was supposed to be for people impacted by redlining, Black Americans, is going to go to white Americans. So that's what I mean by like paying attention and not being so, surface level, and really going deeper and really reading these agendas and researching if it's really going to make an impact.
No, and I agree.
I really,
yeah, I agree.
No, and I really love this conversation, and we're hitting on some very vital points here. And I think this is the perfect time to move into this part of the podcast, which is reparations. So we're discussing being asking and being aggressive in what we want, right? So how has this become a moot point, or will we ever receive reparations for the 400 plus years of oppression? Philanda, you can start on that.
Yeah, I'll start. So in regards to reparations, my opinion is that, we have to look at it from a different lens. I think that, the way that we receive those types of benefits is through a different means. I don't know if we not label it reparations, which is what I would suggest, and label it something different. I actually have something in mind, but I can't say it on this podcast. But,
that's okay.
I think that certain things have to be granted to our people. And again, there's a plan for that, but I think we should look at a difference in terms of housing, in terms of education, and in terms of businesses, and just different things that just really need to happen. And I don't think we sit and wait for someone to give us reparations or just hand us money. I think that if we look at it differently, there's plenty of ways that we can be aggressive about making sure that the 400 plus years of oppression our people have gone through in this country are repaid. I just think, we just have to look at it from a different lens.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of getting a paycheck for reparations. So say that we're all going to get, I don't know, $2,000, right? I don't like that, because I think that it does nothing about the issue of generational dependency, and it doesn't push us towards generational wealth. And I don't know what Falana's plan is. Obviously, it's a secret, but I'm hoping if I, were to think about reparations, I do want to think about it in the context of what it means for housing. When it comes to home ownership for Black people, are they going to have debt forgiveness? I would love to have all of my debt cleared. Is it going to be free college tuition for, African Americans in this country? I think we have to stop looking at these monetary gains, which are very, very temporary and won't do anything to push the needle forward for Black people when it comes to building generational wealth. And so I'm hoping whatever form of reparations that we have does exactly that. And I don't know about you all, but I just feel like, how are they going to figure out who's a descendant of slaves? Because we all kind of mixed up. And we all kind of mixed up with a little something. And it's like,
Right.
okay,
Little
so
something.
if my great grandfather was white, so my blood got a little diluted. So do I have to be a certain percentage of African American or whatever? Like I'm just really curious to how they would really, really break that down, because I guarantee you that if they gave out any kind of money or any form of
Right.
reparations, it's going to be a lot of people that don't look like us coming for those paychecks.
Right.
That part. That's all I'll say. That part.
That part, exactly. All right. So, Rochelle, let's start with you on this. So what do you think needs to happen in order for the Democratic Party to win the 2 seats in Senate?
I don't know if she can hear, so I'll start that off.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So I actually just joined the runoff campaign and working very closely with Warnock, and of course there's a joint team for Ossoff. So very excited to be a part of this historic time in Georgia. Just it's very historic for me. My parents are actually from Georgia. First 5 years of my life, I grew up in coastal Georgia, Brunswick, Georgia, and moved to Texas and back to Atlanta after college. But it's going to be a hard fought race. I mean, some of the realities really are is that, it's hard to get, Black people back out for a runoff. I think that a lot has changed, and I think people do realize the importance of this election. But we all have to come back out, because the reality too on the other side is you had a lot of people who did not vote for Donald Trump but voted Republican down the ticket. So that goes back to my point of the misinformation, because again, I think a lot of people who are voting Republican are doing so out of fear, and we just have to do, I think, getting the right information out. I think, Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff are the absolute best candidates. When I look at the two of them, I don't see, even a lot of the rhetoric that was thrown at the Biden-Harris ticket. You can't really throw that at Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, because they aren't those people. So I really have faith in Georgians. I really have faith in our people. I do know that Georgia wants to finish the job. And I think people now more than ever know how important it is that we win these 2 seats, and you can really localize it. You can localize it to what it means for, healthcare, what it means for racial unrest in our country, what it means about getting this, the right things for the pandemic, getting people back to work. Like, you can really, really localize it with the state. And it was so much happening at the national level that this time it really is personal. And not that it wasn't personal at first, but it really is personal now. So, it's going to be a really tough race, but I have faith not only in Black people, but people as a whole to do the right thing. I just think the messaging has to be clear about what's happening.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'm so excited and interested to see what's going to happen in Georgia. I think one of the things that really needs to be just escalated across the state when it comes to the importance of this election is Mitch McConnell. I think that if there is a hard focus on the fact that if Georgia is able to gain those seats, that Mitch McConnell will lose his power in the Senate. We know that he is spineless. We know he has absolutely no backbone, and he will bend over backwards to do anything for Donald Trump. And I think that one of the things we know is that COVID-19 was one of the top reasons, particularly for Black Americans and the economy, for white Americans, as to why they voted for Biden in this election. And I think that if they can use that to their advantage and show what Mitch McConnell is not and has not done when it comes to COVID-19 and when it comes to the economy. I mean, right now he is the reason why there's a stimulus package sitting on his desk right now. And he has not signed it. He has not brought it to the floor. And this is what we're waiting on. When people are saying, I can't pay my light bills, I lost my job, this or that, whatever, I can't pay my rent. Mitch McConnell is the one holding our checks, and so we have to, I think Georgia has to just drive that home, that it's not just about getting these 2 seats. It's also about getting Mitch McConnell from having the gavel, if you will, in the Senate.
Okay. So last question. What can the Black community look forward to seeing within the first 100 days under the new administration?
I think that for the next 100 days, or the first 100 days, I don't know if we should expect a whole lot in the first 100 days. I mean, there's so much to get cleaned up right now that I'm not sure if we can really put ourselves at the top of the list those first 100 days. Here's the deal. I think that COVID-19 is the Black agenda right now, because we are dying and we're being infected more than any other demographic of people across the country. And so I think that COVID-19, for now, for those first 100 days, that should be the Black agenda. And then we can move on for there. So, I mean, that first 100 days, like I said, I'm not expecting a whole lot. I just want them to figure out how they're going to get this virus under control so we can go back to living as normal as a life as possible.
And I would agree with Rochelle and add to that I think that we should look forward to seeing in the first 100 days the most diverse administration in the history of our country. And to me, that's very exciting and promising. I think it's going to be very, progressive, definitely for our country, in terms of what's going to happen when you see people from all walks of life having a seat at the table in this administration, and very excited to see what that brings, not only in the first 100 days, but in the year and the few years to come for America. So it's a really exciting time to be in the country. We just have to stay engaged and stay active.
Okay. Sorry, having a little audio issue here as well. So we have some people that jumped into the chat, and I would just like both of you to kind of take a look at the screen here. In all fairness, so we're going to bring up a Republican who had a comment. So this is coming from Dark Ages 9117. Yeah.
Okay, so Sunkist, did you just read what's on the screen right now? So who would like to
attack this first?
Comment on the screen. Is that what you just read?
Flana, any opinion on that?
I really don't have a comment, Sunkist. I'd rather remain neutral, but Rochelle, have at it.
Yeah, these are the kind of people I like. I love when people have these sort of comments and they have absolutely no facts or research or anything to back it up. I mean, if they think for 1 second that Trump is a better choice for African Americans, they are sadly mistaken. Home ownership has actually gone down under the Trump administration for Black Americans. Our wage gap has actually increased. And a matter of fact, because of his lack of a response, if you will, to COVID-19, the Black unemployment rate jumped to 16%. Why? Because we make up the most of essential workers that Donald Trump did not care about whatsoever. So please do not sit here and come with a Trumplican, statement, a Trumplican talking points, and the maggot talking points that Biden is not going to do absolutely anything for Black Americans when Trump has done absolutely nothing. And please, with the whole economy thing, okay? Like, he inherited a great economy from one of the greatest presidents in our history, President Obama. Thanks.
Well said.
Okay. Okay. All right. So Aria also jumped in. Let's bring her comment here. Let's see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So
Are you reading Arya's comment? Yeah, I definitely agree, Arya. I mean, now you can't walk down a nice little street with a bunch of restaurants and a coffee shop without seeing a Black Lives Matter sign in it. I'm like, maybe are they putting these signs in there to try to prevent themselves from being vandalized when another protest breaks out? And I would be really curious as to how some of these business treated their Black customers prior to putting that Black Lives Matter sign in their window.
okay. Lana, anything in reference to what Aria mentioned?
No.
No?
I'll take all the heat.
All
I'll
right.
take the smoke.
I think this was a really a great discussion. I want to thank my guests this evening, Falana Williams and Rochelle Ritchie. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. And thank you everyone for tuning in to the Catalyst Lifestyle Podcast. Please, as you see, both of their IG connections are on here. Would any of you like to give any other areas of communication that people can reach you at for support, or if they had any questions as well?
That's the best one for me.
Okay. Rochelle?
I don't know if she can hear you, Sunkiss, but he just asked if there's another or better communication for you other than your handler that is on your screen.
Thank you, Falana. You can find me on Instagram at Rochelle Ritchie, and you can go to my website and visit me, RochelleRitchie.com.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you so much. Big shout out to Aria. Thank you for jumping in the chat. She will be back with us next week. Ladies, thank you again so much for joining us. And as we always say at the end of our podcast and in this discussion, as we clearly know, all we got is us. All right. We'll see you next Sunday. Thank you for tuning in, and peace.